Hello, my crafty friends. It's Michelle, the Southern Shell, and it is the What Would You Make collaboration. This is hosted by Brenda with Rustic and Lace DIY, Christine with Divine Designs, and this month's guest host is Malinda with The Crafty Doll. You will find their channels linked below in my description box, as well as a playlist of all the wonderful creators that are participating in this collaboration. Now, guys, I have one project for you today, and it took me several days to make, but I think it's well worth it. So, hang on to your boots, ladies and gents. Let's get crafting. So here I have some things from my stash. I have some of these arrows from the Dollar Tree, and I have some of these 7-inch wood animals that I've gotten from different places. They are 7 inches, and they were like $1.07 a piece at Walmart, or I think the most I paid was for the chicken, and I had to order that, and it is thicker than the others, but it works. I am taking the legs off of these signs because I don't want them on here. And I'm just using my heat gun and my Cricut spatula here. And it just lifts right on off of there and it just leaves a little bit of glue, but heat that up and you're ready to go. I'm going to come in with my little sander here and I'm just going to give a little sand on the front and the backs of these arrow signs. And then I'm going to paint them with my plaster paint, and I made some stencils on my Cricut. I am using some cornstarch here, and I just brushed my cornstarch over the stencil image so that I can actually see the cutout lines a little easier. That's just a little tip trick, and it's like now you can like tip it over, pounce it off, and I'm going to hold this up to the camera so you can actually see a little bit better where you can see that that's eggs right there that I cut out with my Cricut to make a stencil. Come in here with my weeding tool and I'm going to grab the corner of that little piece I need to pull out, and it pulls out nicely. This one for the G, it wanted to lift up that little centerpiece but just push it back in. Now I'm showing you here, I've got the eggs done. I'm going to show you here on my bacon because I created the images I created, I did an eggs, a milk, and a bacon, and I went ahead and just put little images of those next to it and created a stencil cutout. So it gives a little bit more pizzazz to my sign here. I am going in with a stencil brush and I'm taking my DIY paint and then tapping it off so my brush is a little drier. And then I'm going to pounce it down on top, not swirling it, but just pouncing it down onto that stencil so that it will hopefully not bleed. I did have problems with this paint bleeding on my stencils, so I will figure out, I know there's another way to do this, and I'll probably try that on another project and share with you, but it is to put some Mod Podge down first and then paint on top of the Mod Podge, so your Mod Podge is what is actually bleeding and not your paint. I went ahead and took that DIY paint, covered my animals with those, and now I'm going to come in with my heat gun, heat them up so that they're nice and dry, and then I'm going to pull out my school glue. Now, this is just regular school glue, and the first thing I needed to do, though, was I wanted my paint that I'm going to put over it to be a little thinner. So I'm sorry, we're going to skip the school glue right now, and I'm just going to take my plaster paint, which is really thick chalk paint right now, and I'm just going to add some water to that. I'm going to stir it up and get it ready to go. And then I'm coming in with my school glue, and I'm going to add a nice little coat of school glue on here and brush it nicely over my little chicken. And once that is brushed on there, I am going to go in with my my paint that I actually went ahead and watered down a little bit. And look, I'm just going to take it with this brush and I am going to brush one stroke. Boom, done. And I'm going to come back and do that little spots at the top that I missed. And then I'm just going to come in, loaded brush, boom, loaded brush, boom. And this is not dried school glue. You can see it's still damp on my images. And so you're just going to come in and just do a straight brush across those, and you're going to have a nice crackle effect on this. Now I'm going to come in with my heat gun and give these a little bit more of a dry. And this is going to turn out so stinking adorable. You can see it starting to crackle up on here already. And I am tickled with the way these actually turned out. So as we get to move it forward, let's go ahead and see what I'm going to do next. Well, so the next thing I'm going to do is take those arrows that I painted and I had the stencils on. I'm going to take that same paint and I'm going to go around the edges. I want this to kind of look like, you know, where you have those old porcelain dishes that have the black trim or the blue trim or the red trim around the edges? That's what I really thought would look kind of cute on here, because I've got that plaster and that black just made it pop. Now I have a little tiny saw here, a little tiny table saw, and I am cutting out my farmhouse to go at the top of my sign. And because it's such a small sign, small saw, I have to actually do it in little portions here. So I'll cut, I'll pull it back, and then I'll come in, flip it over, and cut the little piece off. So I drew on the front and the back of my wood pieces and then cut it out and then sanded it very well so that I had a nice smooth surface. Coming right back in with that same plaster paint. This one was the one that I thinned out with a little bit of water, and I'm just going to do one coat over this because I want that wood grain to show through a little bit there. I don't want it to look like I totally painted this barn white. I wanted to see some wood grain. Once again, I'm going to come in with my DIY black paint here. It's the little black dress. And I'm going to go around those edges just like I did on those arrows and give this a little pop of black to frame in my barn. So I cut out this stencil of what the little barn pieces would be on the inside there. And so I'm just cutting them now individually because I framed it in my Cricut with the size I needed for my barn that I cut out. And now I'm just cutting the pieces out individually, so it's a little easier for me to lay on to my barn piece and get some stenciled color in there. Now I am still going to be using the black for some words, but I wanted these pieces to actually be a little subtle. So I'm going to take my transfer tape here and I'm going to lay down my image on top of that transfer tape, and I'm going to match up my lines because that's going to help me lay down my image evenly onto the front of my barn. So my barn door will be even and will look nice. So I'm just going to lay that down there. And once I get those all lined up nicely across the bottom, I can lay it down and then press it and pull back my transfer tape, and my stencil is now on my barn. I'm going to cover my transfer tape back up so it stays fresh for the next stencil I need. Now I'm coming in with Nimbus, okay, Nimbus by Waverly Chalk. It's a chalk paint by Waverly. And I am just going to fill in the cross sections right here of my barn door. I am using a sponge stencil brush here, and I'm pouncing. I'm adding a little bit. I'm dabbing it off in the top of my lid, and I'm pouncing that down on top of my stencil. This worked wonderful. I didn't have any bleed with this chalk paint at all. Now, when I put the Nimbus down, I wanted a little bit of color in there, and I love the green. So this is that mint chip green from DIY Paint, and I am just coming in around the edges, not covering the full places that I've actually painted already. And then I'm coming in and I'm blending those two colors, that Nimbus and that mint chip, so that it is giving me a kind of a ombre gray green look. Now to do my roof, it was easier to just cut that piece off so I wasn't trying to lay it down. And so I just cut that piece off. I centered the tip at the tip of my barn where I wanted it to lay down and have my roof to be. And then I just used that as a guide. And I did the same process with the Nimbus first. And then I came in with that mint chip. Once those were dry, I went ahead and pulled off my stencil paper there, my stencil sticker. Look how crisp those lines are. Oh, love it. So I went ahead and pulled the stencil off of the barn doors, and once again, love it. So the chalk paint, putting that down first, really helped with the bleeding. And I think it's because it is a little bit thicker. It did not run under that stencil quite as much as the DIY paint did. So if I use DIY paint for stencils again, I will put down a layer of something first. Maybe the color, like I could have put down the actual plaster first, and then came back and did the black DIY over it, which I'll probably end up doing in the future. But this worked out fine. So I came back in once again with the black DIY paint, and I didn't put anything down, and this bled pretty bad. But I fixed it. I'll show you how I did it. So once it was done, I came in and I cleaned up the edges of my words, and then I created splatter because I have a shaky hand. I am not steady. And so I did my best cleaning that up. I put some paint on a plastic lid here, sprayed some water on it, and used a stiffer brush to flick those speckles down. I used the plaster color and I used the Nimbus color. And I love the way that turned out.
All right, my lovelies, here you have it. This is the farmhouse sign that I created for the What Would You Make challenge. So, after creating each of the individual pieces, I went ahead and used my staple gun. You can see there's some staples right there. Oh, I need to paint over that glue. I used staples and wood glue to attach these together, and I stood it up before that wood glue was dry, so I need to paint over that. We'll get that done. But I went ahead and used the staples and the wood glue, and then I have that little milk bucket on the bottom there, and we are going to fill that with concrete when the rain stops, and then that will be nice and stable and sturdy, and it is, goodness, it is 4 feet high. I am tickled with the way that turned out, and I will be selling this at my craft shows. I have 2 in November, the first and the second weekend, and that will be taken care of. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I really love how this turned out. I'm going to have a hard time selling it. I really, really am. Look at that chicken. She turned out beautiful, that crackle detail. Wow. Guys, thank you so much. If you've not subscribed to my channel, I hope you will do so by hitting that subscribe button. Hit that bell notification and YouTube should notify you when my next video has gone live. We are ready, getting ready for Christmas time and the holidays, and I am ready to be crafting up a storm. Thank you guys so much for joining me. As always, stay safe, God bless, and bye for now.